as such, I head up a team of web analysts at FreshEgg. We're a digital media, a digital marketing agency. And what we do in my department is we measure and analyze how people interact with our websites. Who in this room has got a business but no website for it? One.
I agree on other people's, it costs me a lot.
How many of you do use any sort of analytical platform to get an understanding of what's actually happening on your website, how people are using it, if they do what they... Very good, that's a few. Google Analytics, maybe other different platforms?
Yeah.
Would you say you use it a lot? Trying to understand how varying the understanding of my audience is tonight. Great. So what I'll do is I'll really largely introduce you to Google Analytics, which is the tool that we use the most, mainly because it's free and it's very good. So any of you who do have websites for your business and who are not using the numbers to understand what's actually happening, I hope to be able to encourage you to speak to those people inside in your company who might know whether or not you have some tracking and actually get interested in these numbers, because quite often they're really, really important to your business. So, web analytics. Web analytics is the measurement, collection, analysis and reporting of data for the purpose of improving website performance, understanding and optimizing the user journey. I think what we quite often find that clients use data for as well is to settle arguments internally. Business, especially smaller businesses, are a lot about opinions. And if we can replace those opinions or some of those opinions or back them up with numbers, then we're quite often in a much stronger position to make positive and good decisions about the business. Google Analytics is just one of many analytics and tracking platforms, but it's a really good one. It's free and it's relatively easy to set up and to get going. And I think what's also really important is that there is a lot of information out there about how to actually do things. So if you've got any problems, if I don't understand something, if something isn't working, just typing your problem into Google will return a string of answers of what the issue might be and how to fix it. And then I'll briefly speak about Google Tag Manager, which is sort of a container solution that helps you to get the implementation done easier. So I don't know, we've probably got varying sizes of businesses in the room. Some of you know that it might be really quite tricky to get changes done to your website. You might work with third-party companies for the development of your site, who every time you ask them to make a small change will present you with a large bill in return. At the end of this, I'll give you a rough idea of how big the development involved in getting something like this onto your site actually is, to debunk some of the myths and potential costs associated with it. Right, so what can we track in Google Analytics? We can track visits, but we can track a lot more than visits. We can get an understanding for demographics, the age and gender of our visitors, their general interests. We get information about what Google Analytics calls in-market segments, so people who are in the market at this moment for a particular service or product. This sort of information is gathered by Google from anonymously, I should add, from our web surfing behaviors. So for example, let's say we are moving house and we know that with a new house we're further away from our job and we need to start looking at our commute, and maybe for our commute we need to lease another car. So we start casually researching car leasing companies and maybe different cars, but then all of a sudden as the move comes closer, our behavior changes and we start the frequency at which we look at maybe a smaller selection of websites that offer this service changes. So then Google recognizes that in this situation we are moving from the research phase maybe into the purchase phase. So about all of these sort of segments, there is information that we can gather that we can use if we so decide. What else do we get from our web analytics? So we get an idea about traffic sources. So how do people actually find our websites? Do they come from Google search? Do they come from the campaigns that we're paying for? Do they come from social media? We've got no idea. Or are they sent to us from other websites? We can look at user journeys, we can look at where they succeed, but we can also look at where they fail. So we've got an idea of how people should be using our website. We can take a really close look at if they're really following that path. that we've laid out for them. Maybe we haven't signposted it clearly enough. So we can go and we can find out where these people are dropping off, and then we can actually do something about it. Performance of marketing campaigns, I mentioned. So we're spending money on all sorts of campaigns, and the beauty of digital is that we can actually track it. We know what we get in return for every penny that we spend. Form completions and checkout funnels. I'll show you some screenshots with what I mean there. But depending on what the key objectives of our business are they a lead generation or people buying something? In that last process, whether that is from your cart page to the thank you page, or from the top of a very long form to the very bottom of a very long form where it actually gets sent, people often drop out at certain stages. There are barriers at certain stages which stop people from completing. And if we can measure where these barriers are and where these people are falling out, we can actually start to do something about it. We can track sales performance, of course. We can track cross-channel performance. Something I'll explain in a second. Device usage. So what devices are people using? We all know that mobile. If this isn't the year of the mobile, then next year is the year of the mobile, or last year was the year of them. Every year seems to be the year of the mobile. And all we can see, if we look at the data, is that mobile traffic is increasing on a steadily. It just depends a little bit on what business you're in, how steep that curve is. So again, for example, for investment decisions, you've had somebody nagging you for ages that you really need a mobile responsive website, because everything is going mobile. First thing I would always do is look at my data, look at my numbers, look at how many mobile users I really get, and if they really have problems converting on my site, or if they don't, they might not have any problems. In which case, that huge investment for a responsive site might not be quite so attractive. And we get information about how our website is performing. Are the pages loading quickly? That sort of thing. Cross-channel performance. I think this is maybe a bit big for this evening, but just very briefly. Quite often, users have multiple touch points with our website before they do what we want them to. So they don't come to our website and do immediately complete the action that they want, but they might come back 3 or 4 or 5 times. Across a number of different visits, across a number of different devices, and from a number of different channels. So to really understand the whole mix and how each channel has contributed to that success, we can use analytics to better understand the input that each of these touch points has had on the journey. Are you still all with me?
Yeah.
I know this can get really difficult, especially even late in the evening. I'll try and keep top line. So, very briefly, Google Analytics, sort of the reporting framework is based on an easy ABC sort of format. A is for audience and acquisition. The audience section of Google Analytics has lots of reports that tell us about who the people are that come to our site. So we mentioned earlier age and gender and interests, but also devices and that sort of thing. Acquisition tells us about channels. Where did we find these users? How did they find our site? Where do they come from? Do they come from search engines? Do they come from email campaigns that we're running or paid for traffic? Do they come from display campaigns or from Facebook? In the behavior sections, we get a string of reports who show us what people actually do once they get to our site. So which are the pages they're interacting with, which are the pages they're landing on. So these pages must be good. They must be appearing somewhere in the search engines for certain search queries. They must be relevant to what people are looking for, because these pages are bringing people in. Last but not least, conversions. So are they actually converting into customers and leads? Are they doing what we want them to do? Are they buying? Are they lead generating, signing up to our services, registering, whatever it is that we want them to do, getting in touch with us, picking up the phone even. So this is what it looks like, and it's all a bit fuzzy, but I'll talk you through it. So here we've got the audience reports, we've got the acquisition, behavior and conversion reports underneath. I'll slowly walk through them and just give you a rough idea of what we can see. So what we're looking at right here is just September, the last month of data. How many visits has our site actually got? So we can break this down by day and by hour even. We can break this down by where they came from. We can break it down by devices. We can very quickly, by changing the date range up here, we can start comparing to last month, to maybe the same month last year, because we know that our business has got a certain sort of seasonality about it, that maybe last month isn't the best to compare with. We get an idea for how many of these users are returning versus new. Do we have a high frequency of users, people coming back? Is that something that's maybe an issue? Do we want to increase people coming back? Do we want to start building relationships? This is all about understanding what's really happening. We then really quickly, so if I go back a slide, here we see these are the same screens. All I changed was I added the comparison date in the date range at the top. So these are our numbers for September. This gives us some context about what happened in September in comparison to August. So we know that our traffic is up, but maybe that our pages per visit are down in average session duration. So we've got more people, but they're spending less time on our site. They're viewing less pages. They're not quite as engaged as they were last month. The next set of reports, within audience there is, let me quickly talk you through. So we've got an overview, we've got sets on active users, demographics, I need to do this all from memory. Geolocation we've got here, we've got behaviour, so frequency of visit, how often do they come back, when do they come back. I can actually read this better. We've got mobile down here, so technology. Within technology we've got browsers and operating systems. And these are really quite important reports, because sometimes your website works perfectly well in a number of browsers but doesn't work at all in another one. This is important for your tech teams, for example, to make sure that actually my website is performing across all devices, platforms, browsers and operating systems at the same level. And then we get a couple of custom reports down here and the user flow. I'll show you one of those flow reports a bit later. Right, acquisition overview. So within the acquisition section, section, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about where do people come from. So this is a pie chart of sources, traffic sources. So the top says organic search. We've got direct. We've got probably social. We've got referral. We've got paid traffic. We've got display traffic, and we've got email here at the very bottom. Quite often we see charts like this, which are 80% in one color, and then maybe have a few little slices of other channels. That's all eggs in one basket. What happens if Google changes their mind tomorrow, changes the algorithm? All of a sudden your website, which so far has been bringing you lots of traffic and did really well for you, disappears from the face of the earth. So we use this sort of information to make sure that people are well spread and save them, or protect themselves from that sort of change of heart, almost. So within the acquisition section, we've got the all traffic reports, within which we can look at different channels. So again, this is just another quick screenshot where we can very quickly see that the majority of our traffic comes from organic search. But these guys are not the ones that are really converting. So here we're looking at pages per session. So we see that the average pages per session are much higher for the two channels, which are not our main channel, right? So, sorry if I'm going a bit too fast. Organic search is simply somebody typing into Google and you ranking in Google, not paid for. So usually on the Google search engine result page, we've got three results at the top which are paid for. We've got a bunch of results down on the right hand side which are also paid for. Everything outside of that is what we refer to as Google Organic. That's where you want your website to really appear, because those clicks are effectively free. So what this shows us is that whilst Google Organic delivers the vast majority of our visitors, it's actually other channels that are converting, where people are actually doing really what we want them to do. So again, this allows us to make informed decisions on campaign spend. Where do we want to put our money next month, next quarter, or next financial year? It's about making those decisions informed. So, channel breakdown, yeah, we don't see much in this. Similar story. This is just the breakdown again of all the different channels, organic, direct, social, etc. It tells us how many visitors we got, how much time they spent, and what they did on our site, and whether or not they converted at the end. We've got many more reports in here. One about Adwords, so we've got very detailed information about paid search advertising, Google AdWords. I don't know if some of you may have heard of it. Down here, all the information about all social campaigns, your Twitters and your Facebooks and your LinkedIn campaigns or whatever, or even non-campaigns. You don't need to be paying for this traffic to actually be receiving it, and other campaign traffic. Next one, the behaviour report. So within the behaviour reports, I've got a slightly more interesting slide coming up in a minute. They all look the same from over there, don't they? Sorry. So within the behaviour reports, we get an idea of page views, unique page views. So how many times was a page opened up on our website? How many times did that happen uniquely? So how many? So looking at the difference between these two, we already see that there is people who are viewing certain numbers or certain pages multiple times. How long do they pay? How long do people spend on average on each page? All this information, everything we're looking at now are aggregated numbers for the entire site. We can break these down for each individual page of your site. We get information for how long the person is on there. We can set tracking up to see whether or not they scrolled, how far down they scrolled, to see if they actually consumed the content that we wanted them to consume, which buttons they clicked on, if they actually followed our calls to action, download this white paper here, or contact us over there. And we also see bounce rate. So bounce rate is really quite an important number. A bounce is somebody who exits our website from the same page that they landed on. So they come to our site and they're straight away gone again. Which gives us quite a clear picture of either the content on that page didn't match their expectations, or they just didn't like our site, or it didn't work for them. So bounce rate can be a really good indicator of pointing us into directions of our site, areas of our site, where things might not be working as we'd hope. User flow, behavior flow. So this is where it gets a bit more interesting. So we can start looking at how do people who come from certain areas of the site, or who actually land in particular areas of the site, how do they then flow through the rest of our site? Which kind of pages do they see afterwards, and where do they drop off? So we see these little red waterfalls, and we can then click into them as well and find out exactly what the areas are where people are falling out of these journeys. I mean, you can see this gets a bit chaotic towards the end, which is because we're looking at the entire website. We can segment all this data, we can break it down into much smaller groups, and as soon as we break it down into much smaller chunks, these sort of reports become a lot more useful. So we can, for example, we know that we've run a particular campaign on a particular day. It probably ran for 3 days. We can look at visitors from that campaign only, who probably came to the site for the first time on that day. And all of a sudden, we're not looking at tens of thousands of people, but maybe at a couple of hundred, maybe even less, maybe about 100 people. Then quite quickly, these flows can become quite useful. Yeah, so this goes down into your site and starts breaking out every individual page. So what are the most popular pages on your site? There is a landing pages report right underneath which says what are the most important landing pages on your site. Landing page being the first page that a person touches when they come to your site. So having this information, we know that these are the pages where it's really important that we produce a positive user experience and brand experience, because this might be the first touch point with our brand, where we want to be able to impress these people and make sure that they actually stick around, go a little bit deeper, maybe come back. And also, as you make changes to your website, you will see things moving here. So next time somebody comes and says we really need to change the content on this page, I take a very close look to make sure that page isn't one of our top performing landing pages, because if that was the case, and if we have a page or an area of the site that is bringing in lots of good traffic, I'd be very careful what changes I make to that area of the site without testing it. Events. So we're still in the behavior section, and we've come down to events. Events, by default, nothing is set up at tracking within events, but within events we can set up tracking of practically anything that we want. Any interaction with the site, whether that is scrolling, whether that is watching videos. We can track how long people are watching videos. So beyond just somebody clicking on the play button, but how long do they actually stick with it? 25%, 50%? Do they watch the whole thing? This is important information. So, for example, everyone keeps telling you that you need to produce video for your website because it's really important and everyone is doing video. Producing video costs money. Before you start producing video for your entire website, maybe produce one, put it on there, start tracking it, see does it actually do anything. Do people who watch this video, are they more or less likely to do what I want them to do? Before then making a decision on whether or not to put all your money into video. These graphs do look all the same, especially when it's a bit fuzzy. I'm sorry about that. Goal tracking reports. So we're in conversions and we're in goal tracking. So goals are macro and micro conversions where people do what you want them to do. So this is quite an interesting subject because quite a lot of the work that we do with businesses starts with us asking them, what is the website doing for you as a business? Where does it come in? Where does it fit in the whole picture? What do you expect your website to deliver? And what are the main conversions on your website? What are your business objectives? And how can we measure these on your website? Quite often there is a total disconnect, and people haven't quite often haven't even thought about matching that whole journey up. So what we do is we create. We start off usually by creating like a measurement framework where we identify, right, what is it that the business tries to achieve, how can we measure all or some of that on the website, and then can we set up tracking to track these numbers. Are people signing up for the newsletter? Because we know that people who sign up for the newsletter are more likely to buy. All that sort of thing. So we track those things as goal conversions. This is one of those funnels that I mentioned earlier. So we've got maybe a card page at the very top, and we've got a thank you page at the very bottom, and we can see with these little red bars how at every stage of this conversion journey we're losing people. And we've probably all experienced it when we want to buy something online and the whole thing is a bit clunky and it's not working, and we try to check out, and then they ask us that one thing that we really don't want to look up right now. We haven't got the information. They're asking me a stupid question. This is it. I'm gone, and I'm probably going to buy somewhere else. This enables you to understand where these people are dropping out and why they're dropping out. Why are all these people dropping out on here? Where are they actually going? And is there anything I can do about that? Another one, another sort of shopping behavior. This is called the shopping behavior analysis. Well, we've also used this for websites which did not have any shopping facility on them. So we're working with big London estate agents at the moment, where instead of purchases we used viewings, a range of viewing instead. And what this then gives us is how many people are coming to the site, how many of those are actually viewing property pages that describe the property, how many of those hit a contact button, and how many of those do then actually end up converting. Because if you look at your user journey this way, you might realize that the problem may not be here, but it may actually be here. So we need to get more people into the property pages. We need to get more people onto the product pages. It's all about understanding what's happening and then starting to optimize your site a bit. Very quickly, custom reports. So you've got a host of standard reports in there, but you can also set up your custom reports very quickly. So these are the metrics that matter to me. Maybe these are the metrics that matter to somebody else in the business. So we've got different stakeholders in the business who've got different expectations from the website, and they need different numbers. So we can very, very easily, you can set up some custom reports in there. You can pick whatever combination of metrics and numbers that you need in there, and then you can schedule them and make sure that every Monday they get sent into that person's inbox by email, and you don't have to deal with it anymore. But this is also a really good way of actually getting people to engage with numbers and with data and with what's happening on their website. Just start sending them the reports. And custom dashboards. Again, quite quick to set up. You can just create these little dashboards which have like number of widgets where you just decide, right, there are these 6 different reports from around Google Analytics that are important for me that I need to check every Monday. I need to see how business was over the weekend. At the end of each month, I want to see where my traffic came from, etc. You can very quickly create these dashboards. I think you can create up to 10 or 12 of them. I think rarely people use more than 1 or 2 to help you to very quickly find the numbers that matter to you regularly, so you don't have to spend too much time in there. Right, so what do we need? All it takes to get Google Analytics on your website is this snippet of code to be placed in every page of your site. So this is a copy-paste job for a developer. For some platforms it might be a little bit more clunky than others, but this is not a big job. So don't take any car mechanic type. It's like the mechanic that pops the hood over. He's like, oh. Don't take any of that. However, stuff that needs additional tracking code put into the code of your site is stuff like e-commerce tracking, event tracking, social button tracking, all the other little bits. All of that conventionally would take extra code to go in. So while there is great resources on the web that tell you how to do all of that, that still probably needs quite a bit of development time. So this is where Google Tag Manager comes in. So Google Tag Manager, Google again disrupted a happy little industry of tag management providers about 2 years ago. These people basically put a snippet of code onto your site, and through that code you can manage everything from the outside. So you don't need to make changes to your tracking code, to your code every time you want to make a change to your tracking. So there was a number of providers who were making quite good money with it, and then Google came along and offered it for free. So instead of placing that Google Analytics code I just showed you into every page, we put the Google Tag Manager code into every page of your site.
That's so much easier to remember.
Sorry?
That's so much easier to remember.
I know.
Julian, I'll give you up to sit.
It's the middle bit that's a bit thinner. This is obviously, this code is easily available within, you set up a Tag Manager account and your code is there, and then it's a copy and paste job. You send that code over to your developers, you say make sure this is in every page, and you're off. You can then, in the Tag Manager interface, which is really quite good and self-explanatory, very, very easily set up your own tracking. You can set up tracking on button clicks, your page views, everything. Everything is really quite straightforward through there. And it does not require additional code for every event. Let's say 3 months down the line you realize you want to track something else as well.
So is this an alternative to Google Analytics?
No, it's a way of implementing it on your site.
Right.
So it's like a hatch almost, so that you can open and you can, from the outside, you can change things without having to ask the developer for their help to change anything. So once this code is on, you can do everything else from the outside. You can get freelancers very, very cheaply online to say, look, I need you to set this up for me. Very, very cheap. It doesn't always need to involve hiring a big expensive agency.
Yeah.
Tina, that's between you and me.
We won't say a thing, don't worry.
No.
So,
rules, okay?
I wasn't sure how many of you were already using it, so I just listed out a couple of sort of common issues we find with Google Analytics implementations that exist. So there is self-referrals, which are referrals from your own website, which usually have some sort of underlying tracking problems. There is a lot of traffic from bots and spam in Google Analytics these days, so your numbers might look bigger than they actually are. These are fairly easily detectable, but you need to occasionally have a look and make sure that there is not too much rubbish in there. Traffic from unwanted websites. This is a favorite with sort of small to medium-sized businesses where you probably engaged a small web development agency to build your website, and they also built 20 other websites. And after they built your website, they took the entire code, copied it, changed the colors, and sold it to someone else. And they did that 10 times. If they also copied your analytics code, you've now got the data for 10 websites in your Google Analytics. You think you're doing really well, You're not. Data tracking code. So tracking code frequently gets updated, and things become better in general. So we always check. Are you using the latest code? Because usually it does make sense that if you do any changes to your site, just update that code as you do it, just to make sure that you can actually make use of all the latest tracking functionality. And no goal or event tracking, that's a big one, and that's always a bit of a surprise. Why would you have a website and actually have any tracking set up if you're not tracking conversions, if you're not tracking what people are actually doing on the site, and if they're doing what you want them to do? Because you don't know if your website's doing well. That was me rushing through my slides.
Well done.
I hope that made sense. I hope some of you take something away from it. As Tina mentioned, we've agreed to run a couple of little workshops which will be a little bit more in depth.